have leadership that's conservative, and the leadership of each chamber gets to decide who gets to chair committees. And then the chairs of those committees get to decide what bills get heard in their committee and what topics you get to discuss. Which ones are too controversial, which ones are right on board with what our marching orders are. So when you can control a chamber, then you can control the committee chairs, and when you control the committee chairs, you control the conversations happening. And certainly we have a representative democracy, but the system can be manipulated in such a way where some of these great ideas never surface. So that's why we have to talk about them here and elsewhere, and not in the Capitol at official hearings. So let's just say there's an issue that's really important to you, and you actually get a committee chair to hold a hearing on it. At that point, there's no obligation to what they call work the bill, which is have a vote in a committee as to whether or not you're going to pass it out of committee into the chamber for full consideration. So really the legislative process, quite honestly, is designed to kill legislation, and only a small number of bills introduced actually make it through the entire process and get signed by the governor and become laws. So if that's the political process and that's how issues get heard, you might wonder then who gets to set the agenda for what issues are going to be heard in committees. And from my perspective, there are certainly some ideas that originate from members in the Senate and the House, or maybe the governor's office, but there are quite a few ideas that don't originate from our representatives. They come from outside interest groups, lobbyists certainly, but other groups. And in Kansas, I think it's important for you all to understand that there are some major players out there that are controlling the conversation. And when I say controlling it, they're controlling it by way of how they support campaigns, who they support in campaigns, funding of marketing campaigns, who they take out to lunch and dinner, and so on and so forth. So there are a couple of groups that I just want everybody to be aware of, and you can do your own research. But in Kansas, the big groups are Kansans for Liberty, who actually just released their slate of 10 issues that they'd like to see happen over the next session, which include restrictions on women's health, removal of civil service protections for public employees, removal of the right to organize and collectively bargain, lower funds for education, defluoridating water, a number of other issues.
Sounds like liberty to me.
Right, exactly. That's liberty. Then you have a companion group, Americans for Prosperity, which is an anti-tax organization, largely funded by Charles and David Koch, based out of Wichita, Kansas, who, by the way, organize most of their businesses in such a way to benefit from Kansas's recent income tax changes. Then you have the Kansas Policy Institute, which sounds super official, and it's a think tank that generates ideas for the legislature to consider. It might be hard to imagine they're also funded by the same people that fund Americans for Prosperity. Then you have Kansas Watchdog, which is this kind of communications news arm that is a sub-entity of the Franklin Center, which, by the way, is funded by Charles and David Koch and various interests of theirs. Then you have a group called CLEAR, Kansas Legislative Education and Research. That sounds very official as well. That's a group of people made up largely of conservative Republicans, and they are a nonprofit, and they simply help educate their members about issues that they should support. Every week they get to have a nice lunch, catered lunch, and they get a kind of slate of issues that we're going to be seeing on the floor, and they get some encouragement about how they should vote on those things. It kind of takes all the hard work of understanding the nuance of policy out, so you just kind of have to get in there and push your button and then get on your way. Then we have the Kansas Chamber of Commerce, and they have several funders that fund other organizations I was just talking about. And the Kansas Chamber has pretty strict requirements on whether or not you get their support during campaign season. You have to vote with them at least 60% of the time. And so, strangely, I don't know how this coordination happens, but 10-15 minutes before a vote, we'll get an email that says, this is a key issue for the Kansas Chamber. How you vote depends on whether or not you're business friendly. And we will consider this come election time. Wow. And I don't know how they know we're about to have those votes, but it's perfectly timed. So the Kansas Chamber, And then you have a group called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. And we actually have some, the Speaker of the House is kind of a high-ranking official in ALEC. And this is a group of, it's a corporate-funded group that basically creates model legislation that then can be handed off to a champion in a state to advocate for and hopefully usher through this process. And so they create things like stand your ground laws in Florida, or they create law. They want to see things like restricting talking and teaching sustainability. So that's the group ALEC. And then you have, so those are kind of, that's the core group, but then you have these kind of other groups like Kansans for Life and the Kansas Coalition for Life, and they are anti-choice groups. A lot of them are based out of Wichita, and interestingly, they have just as much power over the debate as these other groups, and they've started to align themselves with other groups, particularly as it relates to things like judicial selection. So they want to see the way we select Supreme Court justices change so that they can finally have court rulings that help them ultimately restrict access to abortions. So these are kind of the key players in the State House. And again, there are a lot of people who take what these groups provide them and really don't put their own filter on it. And that's to me a significant problem in the state. I don't pretend to know everything about everything, and I don't pretend to not get information from other groups. But I think the key difference is whether or not you look at it critically, you understand that there's a lot of gray area in policy, and then ultimately saying, who am I here representing? Is it corporations or is it people who are struggling on a daily basis? And I happen to think we need more people in the legislature who can think that way. The challenge comes in that it's expensive to run campaigns. My campaign, I think last time around, I raised a little under $20,000. I can't recall. That's chump change for a lot of these organizations. When you're talking Koch money, you can buy tons of House races. You need only 10,000 people to vote for you. So when you think about some of these moderate Republicans that were knocked out of the Senate, they had 35 pieces of slick color mail sent against them. And we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars per mailing to send those to a Senate district. So if the Senate's already taken care of, and it's a larger group of people that you have to mail to, now the focus is on the House, and think about what can happen when you have corporate influence on campaigns like this. So watch out for that. And ultimately, that's some of the problems we're seeing, is if people want to get elected and stay elected, they need funds. And there are certain groups of people that write checks, and there are certain groups that don't. And I think it's inappropriate to only respond to those people that you get checks from. Is everybody with me so far? Feeling great about the state of things? All right. Well, I want to wrap up because I want to have time for questions, and then I actually have to duck out of here just like a couple minutes before 1. But I want to share some things that you all can do. One, if you're not registered to vote, and if you can maneuver the system that we've now put in place to register to vote, you got to do that. Every election is an important election to participate in. Second, I think it's important for you to become a valuable source of information. Find the thing that you are most passionate about. Is it the environment? Is it women's health? Is it education? Is it sustainable development? Whatever it is, become the expert on that. Know it inside and out, so that when you are presented with an opportunity to talk with a policymaker, another voter, somebody in a position of power, you can just speak so confidently about it, and you can persuade them with your passion and your knowledge and your facts. Then I would get more social and increase your influence. Certainly online social presence is important, but get out and talk to people. The longer these important issues like budget and tax and income inequalities in this country are taboo topics to talk about, the longer it's going to take for things to change. So get social and talk about your ideas with other people, and particularly with people who have influence. And if you don't know people with influence, hang out with people who know other people with influence. I think that's a really important thing. Find those targets that can help affect the issue that you care about. I mean, that's a classic community organizing tactic. You have a target, and if you can't get to your primary target, you get to your secondary target who can put influence on your target. Then I think head on over to the Capitol. We just spent like $235 million renovating it. It's a beautiful building. I've got a lovely office in the basement you're welcome to hang out in. And have some FaceTime. I know it's uncomfortable to get up and talk to an elected official, but the reality is we're just people. And there's a good chance if you've done the first thing I suggested, which is or second thing, which is become knowledgeable on an issue, you're going to know more about the issue than the elected official you're talking to. And don't be intimidated by the process, by the building. Quite honestly, I think our whole political process makes it intimidating for the average person to participate in. And even for me, who's somebody who comes from a nonprofit world who likes collaboration and a committee meeting where you have to ask permission to talk and you can't get up and share ideas and have this rich debate, that to me is it's not the ideal system. But don't be intimidated by it. And then just keep a continual presence around these elected officials. Visit them in their districts, visit them in their office, show up and see what business is like in the Capitol. Certainly write letters. Certainly, if you want to start simple and do a form letter and sign on to a petition, that's great. But I really do think there's a lot of value in FaceTime with elected officials. It gets harder to ignore an issue when there's a human face to it. But I would also say, keep in mind it's going to be a tough process because your ideas are going up against a well-funded, well-orchestrated set of ideas and agenda and ideology that is sometimes hard to break through. But I wouldn't give up on it. I mean, we have an amazing state and we have amazing history as a state, and it's too important to let all this pass. So do what you can. Give your time, give your money to the cause, to the people that you think can be a champion for you, and then just get out and do whatever you can to support it. So finally, just a couple of resources for you to become kind of more engaged in the process. There's a website, kslegislature.org, that lists all the representatives and senators. It has their contact information for Topeka and their home. It lists all their committee assignments, and it also lists all the bills that have been introduced, and it allows you to track the progress of a bill and read the notes on it. And if you're worried about being able to understand bills, we have what we call bill summaries, which talk about it in kind of plain English, so it's less intimidating. And use that as a way to get information about legislation and about the people who are crafting this legislation. And then Paul mentioned this with this fiscal book. The Kansas Legislative Research Department has some really easy to digest facts about the state budget. There are some other great groups as well. The Kansas Health Institute has terrific information, not just related to health policy, but fiscal policy as well. I'd be happy to answer questions. If you have a pen and paper, I want to leave my email address with you so that if we can't talk today, that you can call me or email me anytime. So my email address, if you have pen and paper, is just john@johnwilsonforkansas.com. john@johnwilsonforkansas.com. And I will say, Lawrence, hi folks, I live at 19th and Ohio, so I'm right by the school. Should we answer questions? Do we have time for that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Great. All right, I don't know who was first. Ma'am, how about you? Yes.
Okay, I'm getting very concerned. I have talked to my legislators several times now, and what I get is, thank you for your input, but we'll do what we damn well please anyway. And I am getting depressed because it seems like it's getting nowhere. And I'm wondering when we have to go to war. You know, it's to that point. Do we have to surround the Capitol with protesters and threaten people? Because I'm poor. I don't have enough money to come up against the Koch brothers. And with this attitude, thank you very much, we'll do what we damn well please anyway. Where is democracy? I don't see it working.
Yeah. Well, I have to say I'm in the system and I'm part of it, and there are times where I don't see a clear way forward with solutions. So, believe me, I understand where you're coming from. Certainly, I don't think violence is going to solve anything, or even kind of threats. But I do think we need to identify, we meaning people who I think have some shared values, we need to identify the power that we do have. And right now we may not have a lot of legislative or electoral power, but I think we need to not be afraid of power in and of itself. Power is not a bad thing, it's what we do with it. And I think, I don't know that it's going to be an easy solution, but it's going to take working together. It's going to be having uncomfortable conversations with people with whom we disagree. It's going to take people outside of Lawrence, Kansas, and Douglas County being made aware of the realities that they probably will soon face when it comes to their budget, their property taxes, all these things. But I think I have to look back in our history of the state. As I was mentioning at our table, just 5 years ago we had a Democratic governor. And so I think it is possible to change things. Some of it just may take time. And unfortunately, because of the policy changes that have been taking place, there's going to be a lot of people who are incredibly affected by this in the most extreme ways. But it's going to take people who have the means, both in time and money, to help out, and it's going to take people sharing their stories and sharing their concerns with those people that can elevate them even further. But I don't know. Dennis, do you have a...
Do you know, outside of Kansas, what are people saying about the Brownback experiment? Do they expect it to succeed? Do they expect it to fulfill all the promises that he makes, or do they have a more sanguine view of it? What are the outsiders looking at us?
I mean, Paul might have some insights. I haven't seen any ringing press outside the state, but I have to say, inside the state, I get daily press clippings, and from Hutchinson to Ottawa to Wichita to Kansas City to Lawrence, I mean, quite honestly, the administration is getting beat up. So these areas of the state that may not be as progressive or as forward-thinking as our neck of the woods are waking up to the fact that there are some policies that are being made that are going to affect their schools and their property taxes. And as soon as you start affecting people's schools and pocketbooks in dramatic ways, I think that's when we're going to start to see a shift in voting. But I don't think there's, other than hand-selected economists or Art Laffer, you're not going to see people saying, this is going to work.
Okay.
Yes.
Somebody said in 2014 the Supreme Court will make a decision on school funding. Suppose they say that the schools are not adequately funded, that doesn't automatically make money available for the schools. The legislature is going to have to act. What if they choose not to act? What do we do?
Spank
Well, there's a lot of countervailing pressures on our Kansas Supreme Court, given the efforts to change the selection of the Kansas Supreme Court, their budget, they're $8 million under at this point. That in 2006, in the Montoya decision, they actually told the state of Kansas to spend $400 or $500 million more dollars, and we did for a couple years, and then the 2009 recession hit, and we started backing off, and we hit a high of $4,400 per pupil, and now we're about $3,800. Does this Supreme Court, 6 of the 7 members are appointed by Sebelius or Parkinson, have the political courage to step up and say it is our call that this is what suitable education requires? If I were a betting man, I would say that there'll be a lot of language about inadequate funding, but there will be no figures put on the paper that tells the Kansas legislature what they have to do.
Chicken shit.
I was going to ask about, who are the sources one would go to for progressive voices in terms of organizations, even though they may not have the resources that ALEC
Right.
and other groups have?
So there are a couple of sources. You might have some ideas as well, but I wouldn't discount your own experience about things and seeing how that could help inform a policy idea. Second is there's a group called ALICE, actually, that has more progressive focused solutions, including model legislation as well as what they call exemplary legislation, which has actually been passed in other states and been proven to work. Then there's COW. It's out of Wisconsin. It's a an organization that has policy ideas. Then there's the Progressive States Network, which is an umbrella organization for some of those. Other ideas?
Well, I think to be fair, it's a far diminished force in the state of Kansas, and given, what John rattled on in terms of the think tanks and the concerted effort made by the right wing in our state, I mean, it's definitely an uphill battle. I mean, I would put the teachers, KNEA, in a position of, fighting for equity and that. I would, and I work with the League of Women Voters in the state of Kansas, have 9 chapters around the state, and they're nonpartisan, but they're pushing for, certain changes that I think are healthy. I see Zach here in the audience, who's been a lobbyist for the Sierra Club, and there were a number of those folks and renewable energy supporters and the wind energy that came together. That one of the clear victories in the last legislative session was to fight off a repeal of the renewable energy portfolio standard in our state. So it's a grab bag at times, and it's fair to say that it's nowhere near as coordinated, or we don't list the kind of priority. There's not a clear enough list of priorities by all these groups. Because all the, from the disability community to the mental health community to public health departments, you go down a long list, and everybody's been taking hits, losing resources and that, and people have struggled to find a good umbrella organization or to put together, a clear battle plan. And I think that may come together over the future of what happens with the income tax in Kansas.
Because when I was in Wyoming, we had an umbrella, the Equality Policy Center or something like that. But it was basically like everybody from the unions to, various groups coming together under, like you said, under an umbrella.
Yeah.
To try to kind of articulate at least some sort of progressive vision. So.
Right. And I will say, the KNEA, the teachers group, is one of the better funded organizations in the state when it comes to political activity. And because of that, we've seen in this last session kind of attacks on their ability for members to automatically contribute to their political action committee and all of that, because if you can help defund the entity that's standing up for school funding, then that helps you continue on your path. And we're also seeing a kind of attacks on civil service protections for public employees. We are seeing a push to restrict counties from lobbying at the Capitol or speaking up on issues that are going to affect their budgets. So that's the scary part. Is there seems to be a desire for this absolute power. It's not enough that we have the legislative control, but we also want to control the debate and defund opposition.
Sarah?
I was wondering, if it's important to support our own legislators.